Before I start the video, I want to say that a lot of people watch my videos without a subscription. If my content resonates with you, you could subscribe to the channel. Thus YouTube would promote it more, which in turn would motivate me to release and improve content more often. Thank you. It was a typical evening when I decided to sell my headphones on Craigslist. I wasn't expecting much, just some extra cash to put towards a new pair. A guy named Squirrely messaged me, and we agreed on a time and location for the exchange. But I had a prior engagement and asked my boyfriend to do it for me. Days went by, and I thought nothing of it until I received a barrage of emails from Squirrely. He was furious that I didn't show up in person, as he was expecting a female seller. He accused me of betraying the agreement and demanded that I settle this by visiting his home address. I was taken aback and began to feel uneasy about the whole situation. Who was this guy, and what did he want from me? After several days of harassment, I threatened to call the police and blocked his messages. I hoped that would be the end of it, but the feeling of unease lingered. What would have happened if I had gone to his house? Would I have been safe? One night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a strange noise outside my window. It was like scratching, as if someone was trying to pry it open. I froze, not daring to move or make a sound. The scratching continued for what seemed like an eternity until it finally stopped. I tried to convince myself that it was just a branch, but deep down, I knew it was something more sinister. I knew I had to take action, but I didn't know where to turn. I confided in my boyfriend, who suggested that we install security cameras around our apartment. We also contacted the police, who advised us to be vigilant and report any suspicious activity. Days turned into weeks, and the constant fear began to take a toll on my mental health. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't even leave the house without feeling like I was being watched. But just as I was about to give up hope, the police called me with some news. They had arrested Squirrely for breaking into a woman's house and assaulting her. When they searched his apartment, they found a stash of stolen items, including my headphones. It was a relief to know that he was off the streets and couldn't harm anyone else. But even though he was in jail, the fear remained. I knew that there were others out there, just like Squirrely, waiting to prey on innocent victims. And as I looked out the window, I couldn't help but wonder if they were watching me too. As a struggling writer, I had spent countless hours scouring the internet for job postings that might help me make ends meet. So when I stumbled upon an ad on Craigslist promising a steady $500 a week and a place to live, I couldn't resist. The ad mentioned that over 200 applicants had applied, but I was confident in my writing skills and figured I had a shot. After a series of interviews with a man named Mark, I was thrilled to learn that I had landed the job. Mark told me that the position involved watching over a farm in rural Ohio and making sure everything was running smoothly. It sounded like the perfect opportunity to escape the city and clear my head. On the day of my scheduled meeting with Mark, I waited nervously on the side of the road for his associate to pick me up. A burly man in a white van pulled up and introduced himself as Jack. He said that Mark had sent him to collect me and that we needed to drive deeper into the countryside to reach the farm. As we drove, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The trees around us seemed to close in, and I began to wonder if I had made a terrible mistake. But when we finally reached a dense thicket of trees, Jack led me through the underbrush, assuring me that we were almost there. It was then that I heard the sound of a gun being cocked. I spun around just in time to see Jack pointing a pistol at my face. The next thing I knew, a bullet had shattered my elbow, and I fell to the ground in agony. I crawled away as fast as I could, but Jack and his accomplice, a young man he introduced as his nephew, pursued me through the woods. They fired round after round at my back, and I knew that it was only a matter of time before they caught up to me. But just when I thought it was over, I stumbled upon an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods. I pushed my way inside, slamming the door shut behind me, and collapsed onto the floor. It was hours before I could muster up the strength to leave the cabin and seek help. When I finally stumbled upon a nearby town, I was covered in blood and shaking with fear. But as I told my story to the police, I realized the horrifying truth. Jack and his accomplice had lured men into the woods with the promise of a job, just like they had with me. And they had already killed 3 men and buried their bodies in shallow graves. The thought of what could have happened to me if I hadn't managed to escape filled me with dread. I shuddered at the memory of Jack's gun pointing at my face and the sound of bullets whizzing past my head. But as I looked back on that day, I knew that I had survived for a reason. The memory of that harrowing experience would stay with me for the rest of my life, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most innocent of job ads. It was a dark and stormy night, the perfect backdrop for the horror that was about to unfold. The sound of rain tapping against the windows of Lily Hernandez's apartment provided a calming background noise as she prepared for a night of work. She had been working as a sex worker in downtown Los Angeles for a few months now, and it was the only way she could make ends meet. Lily Hernandez was a beautiful woman, with long curly black hair and bright green eyes. She was only 27 years old, but life had been hard on her. She had grown up in a broken home, and her parents had abandoned her at a young age. She had turned to drugs to ease the pain, but that had only made things worse. Now she was trying to turn her life around, but it was a difficult journey. On the evening of July 12, 2016, Lily received a message from a man named David Rodriguez. He had seen her ad on one of the online platforms and wanted to meet her. Lily was hesitant at first, but she needed the money. After some negotiation, they agreed to meet at a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Lily arrived at the hotel, and David was waiting for her in the lobby. He was a tall man, with broad shoulders and a menacing demeanor. Lily felt uneasy, but she pushed her fear aside and followed him up to the room. Once they were alone, David demanded his money back from Lily. She refused, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. David's face twisted into a mask of rage, and he lunged at Lily. She fought back with all her might, but he was too strong for her. He pinned her down and began to strangle her. Lily's vision started to blur, and she felt her consciousness slipping away. In her final moments, she thought of all the things she wished she could have done differently. David realized what he had done and panicked. He drove her body to a secluded area near the Angeles National Forest and buried her in a shallow grave. He thought he had gotten away with the perfect crime, but he was wrong. The investigation into Lily's disappearance began when her family reported her missing. The authorities soon discovered that she had been seen with David the night she disappeared. They tracked him down and questioned him. David denied any involvement at first, but he eventually cracked under the pressure. The police were able to locate Lily's body in the shallow grave, and David was arrested and charged with her murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The tragedy of Lily Hernandez's death shook the community to its core. Her family and friends were devastated, and the incident brought attention to the dangers that sex workers face every day. It was a harsh reminder that life is fragile and that anything can happen at any moment. As the rain continued to fall outside, Lily's memory lived on in the hearts of those who loved her. Her tragic story would never be forgotten, and it would serve as a warning to others to be careful and always look out for themselves. Emily had just moved to the city for a new job and needed an affordable way to get around. She had been searching for a used bicycle for weeks and finally came across a listing on Craigslist that looked perfect. The bike was in great condition and the seller was asking a very reasonable price. Excited, Emily reached out to the seller and they agreed to meet in a park in a nearby neighborhood. As she arrived at the park, she looked around for the seller but didn't see anyone who matched the photo he had sent her. She waited for a few minutes, feeling uneasy and nervous, until a man approached her. "Are you Emily?" the man asked. Emily nodded, relieved that she had finally found the seller. The man looked nothing like the photo he had sent her. He was tall and had a scruffy beard, and his eyes darted around nervously. "Let's make this quick," he said, his voice gruff. Emily handed him the money, and the man handed her the bike. She inspected it quickly and was satisfied that it was in good condition. She was about to ride away when the man grabbed her backpack and started to run. Emily was stunned for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then she started to chase after him, but the man was too fast. She was alone and didn't have her phone, so she couldn't call for help. As Emily ran, she realized that she was in a part of the city that she didn't know well. She had heard stories of people getting robbed on Craigslist, but she never thought it would happen to her. Desperate for help, Emily looked around for someone who could help her. Finally, she saw a police car parked nearby and ran over to it, gasping for breath. "Please help me," she cried. "Someone just stole my backpack and my bike." The officers listened carefully to Emily's story and quickly took action. They searched the area and were able to catch the man who had stolen her belongings. Emily's backpack and bike were recovered, and the man was taken into custody. Emily was shaken by the experience and realized that she needed to be more cautious when buying things on Craigslist. She vowed to only meet with sellers in public places and to bring a friend with her whenever possible. As she rode her new bike home, she couldn't shake the feeling of fear that had settled over her. She knew that she had been lucky to escape the situation unharmed. But she also knew that not everyone was as fortunate. From that day on, Emily made it a point to stay vigilant and aware of the dangers of buying things on Craigslist. She had learned the hard way that the convenience of online shopping can come at a high cost. I had always heard about scams on Craigslist, but I never thought it would happen to me. I was selling my beloved motorcycle on the site, hoping to get some quick cash before heading off to college. To my surprise, I received an offer for my asking price, which was a bit high. But as the saying goes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The buyer, who claimed he was out of state, wanted to pay through PayPal and have his brother come pick up the motorcycle and ship it for him. Red flags started popping up in my mind, but I figured I wouldn't do anything until the money was in my account. Things took a turn for the worse when the buyer claimed he couldn't send the shipping money to his brother and wanted to add the cost to my PayPal account. I knew this was fishy, so I refused to do anything until I had received the money. That's when I got an email from PayPal asking me to send $1,200 through some random bank to a shipping company. I knew something was off, especially since there was no money in my account. I told the buyer there was no money in my account and I wouldn't do anything until I received it. He responded with some half-hearted excuse about needing me to send the money to get the money, but I wasn't buying it. I wasn't about to send $1,200 to some unknown entity, especially when I didn't even have the money in the first place. I thought I had escaped the scam, but the worst was yet to come. When I refreshed my posting, the buyer messaged me again with the same pitch as before, as if our entire interaction had never happened. My heart sank. I realized this wasn't just some innocent scammer looking to make a quick buck. This was someone who was persistent and wanted something from me. I immediately deleted the post and blocked the buyer's account, hoping that would be the end of it. But for days after, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I felt like I was being watched, like someone was always around the corner waiting for me. It was as if the scammer was still there, lurking in the shadows and waiting for his chance to strike. One night, I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep when I heard a noise outside my window. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard footsteps getting closer and closer. My heart raced as I realized someone was trying to break in. I tried to call the police, but my phone was dead. I was alone and defenseless, with nothing but my fear to protect me. Just as I thought it was the end for me, the footsteps stopped. I held my breath, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. The intruder was gone, as quickly and quietly as he had come. I didn't sleep that night, or the nights that followed. I was always on edge, always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for the next attack. In the end, I never found out who was trying to break in, but I knew deep down it was the same person who had tried to scam me on Craigslist. They weren't just after my money, they were after me. And now, I live in constant fear, wondering when they'll come back for me again.